The Sherpa Screening Room is a presentation of podcast picks with Jim the Podcast Sherpa. These are episodes featuring interviews with artists and creators from various fields. Coincidentally, when the Sherpa tries to be entertaining, afterwards, he gets abandoned in various fields.
This week, on the Sherpa Screening Room, certified financial planner and author Shannon Ryan stops by to talk about her new book, Your Money Has Feelings, which is about the emotional relationship people have with money. That's very accurate for me, since I'll be very emotional when the Sherpa pays me. The last time he wrote me a check, the bank bounced.
Coming to you from Sherpa Chalet in beautiful downtown Mount Podcastia, it's time for entertainment interviews in the Sherpa Screening Room. Grab an aisle seat and a bucket of popcorn, but don't crunch too loud or you'll miss the show. Now, here's your host, Jim, the Podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels of the Sherpalution, and welcome to the Sherpa Screening Room. It is a side project of Podcast Picks with Jim the Podcast Sherpa. And speaking of Jim the Podcast Sherpa, oh yeah, that's me. Hello, coming to you from Sherpaloo Studios here in the Sherpa Chalet high atop Mount Podcastia, where I get to overlook the millions and millions of podcasts that are out there. But these episodes, we get to talk to the creators, you know, the actors, the singers, the dancers, the directors, the producers, and the writers. And we have an author today. She is a certified financial planner. She's also been a TEDx speaker, and you know that means that she'll have lots of interesting things to say. And she's also got a new book coming out. She's got a few books out already, but there's one coming out in September of 2025 called Your Money Has Feelings, having to do with our emotional relationship with money. There's more to it than you may think there is. It was really fascinating to talk to this lady. Her name is Shannon Ryan, and she is out in California, and we really touched on a lot of things. One thing that I will point out about this interview, it's a little bit different than my usual interviews. When we were setting up the interview, Shannon sent me a list of topics to discuss for the interview, and I normally don't do that. We usually just have conversations that are off the cuff, but I'm really glad that she did, because there's some terminology that she could explain that will help you understand the book, should you choose to buy the book, which you can get through a link right here on the show notes, like we always do with all of our authors. But there were a lot of really fascinating things here, and I learned a lot. And I like the episodes where I get to learn a lot. And she was a pleasure to speak to. So I guess we are just going to move into the money room, and you'll get to hear my conversation with Shannon Ryan, the author of Your Money Has Feelings. Hello there, Rebels. We are here in the money room with my guest today. Her name is Shannon Ryan. She is a certified financial planner and the author of several books. She's got a new book that will be out in September of 2025, depending on when you are listening to this episode. It is called Your Money Has Feelings, and she's coming to us from the great state of California. Shannon Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
So 30 years, yeah, I'm judged by the looks. Were you like 8 years old when you started?
I need to hold my face up when I say that, right? Yes, I was 5.
I like that. You knew how to count, and then your career was set.
Exactly.
Kindergarten. And also, we found out that we have a mutual acquaintance in Joe Salsi High.
We do. We used to work at the same firm 100 years ago.
Yeah, and of course, Joe is also a guest too, and a very fun one. And you've been on Stacking Benjamins as well.
I have, a long time ago. Joe is fantastic. When he kicked his podcast off originally, I think it was 2012, 2011, he had actually reached out to me and said, because I was doing children's books at the time, I said, hey, Shannon, you need to start podcasting. He was really on the forefront of that. And I had just gone back into private practice because I had young children, and I wish I had jumped on. He put together an unbelievable group, and I am just so impressed what he has done with his podcast. He just delivers such great advice, and he's really taken it far. So he's done a great job, and I should have gotten on that bandwagon a lot sooner. So I still don't have a podcast.
Okay, but as we said, you've done some videos for YouTube, and you're gonna kind of incorporate them a little bit into your website. And the book now, Your Money Has Feelings, is actually a little bit step in a different direction, more towards adults than for children.
It is. So back in 2012, when I was talking to Joe about doing a podcast, I was really focused on how to raise financial savvy kids, meaning how do we instill positive feelings around money with kids. And I knew as a financial advisor, and I don't just play one on TV. I literally sit with real people all day long. I was with 5 people today. And when you have a chance for 30 years to sit with real people and talk about their money, you learn really quickly that money is emotional. And a lot of these emotions start when we're really young. And how we think about money and interact with money starts with, I don't know, trips to Target and how our parents reacted to the I want, I want, I wants. So I started with children's books. My book coming out in September is going to be focused on the adult emotion behind money and how I believe it really prevents people from getting what they want financially. And ultimately, that's just to be happy with their money.
Do you think that every financial decision has that emotional element to it?
I do. I do. And it's hard to say that because I think when we talk about money, so many of us want to be logical because it's math, right? It's
Right.
numbers and it's cents and it's stocks and it's bonds. So think about this. If you wanted Jim to go learn something about money, all you would have to do is, I don't know, Google it. Go to ChatGPT. What is a stock? What is a bond? How should I invest? And how do I get started? It's all out there. So why are 77% of people in the United States reporting that they still feel financially uncomfortable or financially illiterate? I don't think it's from a lack of information. I think it's from a lack of understanding about how we interact and react to money and all this stuff that we call that carry with us that I call financial scar tissue. And I think our industry, as much as I love my industry, has it wrong. We put ticker tapes across the top of TVs. We talk about buy this, sell that. We do spreadsheets and we lose the human in all of it. And I think that's where we're falling short and we're not helping people as much as we need to.
Now, when you're referring to financial scar tissue, you're talking about like if maybe the parents went bankrupt or the IRS seized property or things like that, losing a job, maybe a parent divorcing or something like that.
Yeah. And those are the big things. It can come in a lot of different forms. It could be remembering your parents just arguing over bills over the kitchen table. It could be you personally losing a job early in your career and feeling devastated. Like, am I ever going to get ahead? It could be watching power plays. I mean, it could be a first marriage where somebody was making more and using money as power in the marriage. And 20 years later, you're still dealing with the wounds, and therefore the scar tissue is, like any wound, a scar tissue remains in the body long after the wound is healed. And sometimes it gets hit, and sometimes you don't even know that it's there. But how we react to money, you could have one of these experiences and then be in an argument with your spouse or a friend over money and not even know why you're reacting the way you are. You're being triggered over something. You're like, why am I losing my you-know-what over this? It's like no big deal. And then you remember, because I'm feeling vulnerable. And my father used money over my family as power because he was the primary breadwinner. That's why I'm reacting. So most of the time, we're not aware of that scar tissue that we carry.
It's funny, as you're addressing these scenarios, the one that popped into my head was, my friend wants to borrow money from me. Should I lend it to them? And what happens when they don't pay it back? And all of a sudden, that person that you have whatever type of relationship with, everything seems different.
Absolutely. No, 100%. And it's one of those things. Money is funny. Like it's in 30 years, can you imagine how many of my friends have said, Shannon, you've got to work with my money. You've got to be my financial advisor. And I have never gone after my friends. I said when I first got into business that if I had to pursue family and friends to be my clients, I wasn't going to do it because money is so emotional. I never wanted to be in a position where if the markets were down or something, that all of a sudden they're angry with me at the family dinner. Thanksgiving was uncomfortable. And the same thing is whether when we lend money. Early in my career, I had somebody in one of my offices that I was running needed some money and I lent it to her and she has never paid me back. And I remember that 27 years later, and she probably doesn't remember that. So I've learned that if you lend money, you should be giving it as a gift. But even if you do that, it's still it's still hard because the next person who asks you, you're like, oh, do I do it? Do I not do it? So it's emotional.
Yeah. I remember somebody saying, and I like that piece of advice, that if someone asked you for money, you would think to yourself, would I ask this person for money?
Mhm.
To kind of, I guess, maybe level the playing field a little bit and maybe get a perspective on, what's going to happen, when this money's got to go back to where it originally came from.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's funny too, because when you really think about it in the broad scope of things, I think most of us would rather be in the position where we're able to lend the money or give the money than be the person asking. I think in some cases it takes a lot for a family or a friend to ask for money, but not always. There's some very manipulative people who just ask everybody for money, knowing that we want to be generous. And I think we get to make the decision. Over the years, I've always felt that it's harder to ask for money. And if I was in a position to give it, I've chosen to give it, but I've always in the back of my head has said, this is a gift and I don't want to have any expectations with this, because that's when people get let down. So it's a funny dynamic.
Yeah. And really what you're just saying, with people constantly asking for money, then again, the emotional thing comes in, because they're playing on your sympathies, because they know, oh, this person needs it, so I got to give them the money, and there you have it. It's right there without you even thinking about it. It's just a reaction.
No, it's a reaction, and then I think most people are good. Most people really want to help other people, and if they have the resources to help other people who are not good also know that, and they can be very manipulative. So when I'm talking about, if you're in a position to loan money, give money, if it's a family member or somebody that you trust, that really needs it, and you're able to do it, give it. Just don't expect it to be returned. It's a healthier way of doing it.
Absolutely. You mentioned something called money scripts. What exactly is a money script, and why are there different ones?
So a money script is our story around money. Common money script I hear is, I'm not any good with money, or I'll never have that much money, or I always lose all of my money. So very similar to other scripts or things that we say over and over and over in our life that we start to believe. Money is the same way. And I hear it all the time, that I'm not good with money. I can't figure it out. I just let somebody else do it. Mm-hmm. So we create stories about money, and it actually limits us in our success with money.
And that's really part of what your book wants to build financial confidence. And as you said, financial confidence doesn't really have anything to do with how much money you have, but I guess your attitude towards it and how you can handle it.
Yeah. And I tell a lot of stories in the book, because one of the things that I've always loved is I learn through examples and stories. So I have a lot of stories, and then one of the stories that I talk about is a client that has a significant amount of money. In fact, more money than she will probably ever need in her lifetime. Mm-hmm. But she grew up in such a frugal household and had so little when she was growing up that she's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And she loves to play tennis, but she keeps getting injured because she won't spend the right amount of money on a protective shoe on the court, although she could buy 10 shoes. And so it took years for me to get her comfortable enough to buy the right shoe, because she had bag lady syndrome. She kept saying, well, this could be all gone tomorrow. I can't spend the money. So mm-hmm. there's very complicated relationships with money, and it doesn't have anything to do, I should say, not having a lot of money can be hard. It is, everyone says, well, money doesn't make you happy. Well, it kind of does. I mean, if you have enough money and you use it the right way, it can make a big difference in your life. So I don't subscribe to, money doesn't make you happy. But what I will tell you is, just because you have money doesn't mean that you are happy with how you use your money in your life.
I know that they refer to like different generations of people, and that they've got certain types of relationships with money. Like we could think probably like our grandparents, our great grandparents who lived through the Depression, right? And then it was like, hold on to everything. Don't spend extravagantly. This may happen again. And you kind of get that built-in fear.
I think it's hard if you've been through a depression where you're reusing a paper towel, or, I mean, just things that, I mean, the stories. And I've worked with depression people who went through the depression, and children that had parents that were depression families. And it's a mindset, and it takes sometimes their whole life. I mean, they have plenty of resources to retire and do the things they want to do, but they can never spend the money. They can't even enjoy it because they're so worried that tomorrow it all could be gone, that they hoard it and hold on to it. And that's not healthy either.
Right. Hey, you made a statement on here that I thought was really interesting. You said that budgets and spreadsheets don't work.
They don't. I don't like they do. I mean, you can track stuff on budgets and spreadsheets, but I think I think it's a 4-letter word. I mean, if you say budget, tell me, Jim, do you feel good, or do you feel like someone's restricting you? Like, I can't do what I want to do. I don't want to be on a budget. And so sometimes I think we approach money the wrong way. We'll sit down and say, okay, tell me everything that you spend today, tomorrow, track everything. It's kind of like tracking your food. Have you ever been on a diet and you got to track your food? I stink at that. I never write everything down. And then I'm like, I failed again. The scale tells me I failed again. So I'm off this diet. The same thing happens with our money. Is if we get too restrictive on budgets and spreadsheets, like, this is what I have to do, and I've got to track every single last dollar. It works the same way that tracking your food for losing weight. And most of us are failing at doing that. I find that you have to know what you're spending, meaning to truly work with your money, you have to know what you're spending. But to inventory it is typically not the best way to do it. What I find is to figure out what you're spending on an annual basis, to start to work on what is your run rate, meaning what does it cost you to live, and what part of your money are you making discretionary choices on. Some of our money we need to spend on our rent, on our mortgages, on our food, on our cars, basics. And then for most of us, and not for everybody in the world, let me be clear, there's some people in the world that don't have any choice on their money. They're barely making it, but the rest of us do. And how we're making the choice on that money determines if we're getting the things that we want. And so the first step is understanding your budget. And typically what I'll do is I'll have somebody go back through an entire year of their bank account that they write all their checks out of, and just average the months. And every single time someone will say, oh, but that was a holiday. And the car needed new tires. And I'm like, every year that's all going to happen. So you start to get an average. And then you also start to see, oh man, I'm spending a lot of money at a drive-through. Like, is that making me happy? Because if you're leaking money out to, what I see the most is like food costs or entertainment costs or clothing costs, and I'll ask, is that making you happy? Meaning you're telling me you can't do other things. You can't travel. You can't do these things. I can't. But yet it kind of can. This money's flowing through your hands. You're just spending it on other things. Are those things making you as happy as what you could be spending it on? So the budget and the spreadsheets are helpful, but they're a tough place to start. Really understanding what you're spending, really understanding it is the beginning to understanding where the money is going that you have discretion over. And are you spending it in places that make you happy? And if you don't spend money on things that discretionary money, unless it's making you happy, and stop telling yourself you can't do things you can when you're wasting the money somewhere else. So that's why budgets don't work.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because my next question was going to be about financial confidence. And that's really a big step in it, to
Huge.
Know why it's going where it's going and going in that direction.
And that's hard too, because there's a reality check there. If you take a look, if you just take your bank statements and your credit cards, if you're spending money on a couple credit cards and you've got a bank statement, so you're paying your credit cards out of your bank. So every check's coming in, things are going out, and you start to look whether you're spending on Venmo, and you can pull reports on that, by the way, or you're spending money on credit cards, and start to look at it honestly. And I do this with my 21-year-old daughter, and at the beginning, she didn't like it, because the reality is she was overspending her budget on a monthly basis. She goes, Mom, I really want to save money, and I don't feel like you can do some of the things I want to do with my friends. In the beginning, when I started going through with her, she's like, well, defensive. I had to get coffee that day, or I had to get a meal, and I'm like, no, I will not judge where you're spending money, but you're telling me you don't have enough. So once you start going through it and you're willing to look at it, you can start to see patterns of how you spend, good, bad, or ugly. Once you know what you're doing, then you can make a different decision. And that brings confidence. And I think that that's where confidence starts, but it's hard to look it square in the face sometimes to start.
You mentioned traditional finance and behavioral finance. And you said that actually sometimes behavioral finance gets it right more often than traditional finance. Is that just because everybody's situation is different, or there is a little bit more to it?
You know what it is? So let's define it. So traditional finance says that we are always going to be logical. We're going to pick the right stock. We're going to make the right investment. We're going to always save in our 401ks. We're going to do things traditionally. We're going to understand traditional finance and we're going to make logical decisions. But we don't make logical decisions all the time, meaning every decision, even if it seems logical, there's typically a bias, some sort of like a herd bias. Well, everyone's buying NVIDIA, so I'm going to buy NVIDIA. So it's not totally logical. So many of our choices, our logical, traditional choices, have some element of behavior involved, whether it's a bias, whether it's a story we've been telling ourselves. So when we understand the traditional ways of investing and handling money, but we interject the knowledge that we are driven behaviorally around money, that's when we make better decisions. That's when I see financial success really happening.
So let everybody know like what Your Money Has Feelings is going to do for them, just so that they have an understanding when they click the link on my show notes and they say, oh, I want to check this book out.
Thank you. So I wrote the book in two parts. So the beginning, I go deep into experiences around money. Fear is one of the biggest experiences that we have around money. Fear of running out, fear of having too much. You know that people who out-earn family members or have more than friends fear judgment for having too much money too. So there's so many types of fear and shame and guilt around money. So I start the book talking about the different types of stories we tell each other, the different types of emotions that we have around money. And I have several stories and examples in there. And what I found with everyone who's read the book so far is they can really see themselves in some of these different stories. And then they can't unsee it, meaning there's so rare that I'll talk to somebody. And I did a TEDx talk about 2.5 to 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I swear walking out of the auditorium, people were like, oh my gosh, Jen, I got to tell you this money story. And I learned this from my parents. And so the book does the same thing. The first half of it really says, hey, listen, here are all the different biases, money disorders. Here are all the things you can run into with money. Did you know? The second half of the book really goes a deep dive. Okay, let's dive into money, knowing that you've got these emotions. Now let's get some logic involved. How do we become financially successful? And I had a client today say that she loved it because it was more like a workbook. She said, Shannon, I'm glad you didn't do a hard copy. I'm glad you just did a soft copy because I've been writing in mine. I'm a child of the 80s and we used to love Cliff Notes. Like if you had to read a book for school, you're like, oh, I'm getting the Cliff Notes to read it. So I literally put the Cliff Notes in the back of the book and it's called Money Smarts. And I went through every single chapter and told you what I wanted you to get out of it. So you can use it very functionally. Read what you're going to learn and go through the different chapters in the Money Smarts. And if something resonates, then go read that chapter, read those stories. So I'm hoping it's going to be a tool that people can really dig into and use according to what they need personally.
I appreciate you doing that. Now, your other two books really dealt with financial literacy for kids. Yes. And you have 2 daughters. I know that. Yeah, I read in your bio. And how old were they when you felt that you could talk to them about money and kind of get them to understand the world that goes around money?
Yeah, I started noticing, and I said before I jumped on, I've got a master's of science in financial planning, but I'm not a psychologist. But I started, and I see so much emotion around money. It's hard not to, but I started noticing my kids and other kids interacting with money starting around 2 or 3. And now that I've said it, you're going to see it too. So if you go to a big box store, if you're at the grocery store, you will hear a child that's in,
I want that.
I want. And by the way, we want too as adults. I mean, the emotion doesn't go away. We start to express it differently, but the I want start really early. And how we as parents respond to those wants, how your parents responded to your wants, whether you realize it or not, probably has some influence in how you feel around money today. So if we're going through Target and my daughter, I remember my daughters loved Barbies. And so one of my daughters was with me and we're in Target and there's this Barbie that she loved. Like, I want this Barbie. And rather than saying, and I was in a rush and it's so hard when you're a parent not to slow down. But I'm like, rather than saying, no, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time. Think about what that just said. If I say that, it said, we don't have enough money. The child's going, oh my gosh, we don't have enough money. Am I going to be able to do the things I want to do? I don't have time to listen to you. What you want is not important. So I learned early that if you could just slow down and say, wow, that's a cool Barbie. Can you tell me what's different from her than the 8 that you have at home? And how to explain it. And then tell them what you're saving for. As a family, we're going to be going to Disneyland in the summer. We're saving our money to make that trip. Super excited to do that. Is this something that you really love? Can we tell them how to get it? Can we put it on a wish list? Do you want to do some chores for it? Do you want to do a lemonade stand? And by the time you get to that point, it's like, oh, no, Mom, I just thought it was cool. And they would put it back. So we early on worked with our girls around those types of budgets, tried to never say no, but tried to really instill that as a family, there's a finite amount of money, meaning there's things that we need to pay for, and there's things we're making discretionary choices on as a family, that they're part of it, versus just saying, no, we have no time or no money for what you want. And that's what I try to describe in the children's book. So rather than creating a lecture, which nobody likes a lecture, I don't like a lecture, kids don't like a lecture, you don't want to sit down at the dinner table and teach these things. You want to do it on the go. So the children's books are really just books that help parents talk to the kids about save, share, and spend.
Because I know financial literacy has been your mission, do you think that it should be taught in schools, or does it become a little too subjective when they're teaching it in schools, that kids think like, well, why aren't my parents doing this? And, does that maybe put them in a different mindset?
Yeah. It's interesting. I wish I had $1 for every time someone said it should be taught in schools. I mean, it's like, that is the first thing, like, it should be taught in schools. Absolutely. I mean, we should teach basic economics in school. How to, I don't know, does anybody write a check anymore? No one writes a check anymore. But so, how to interact with bank, how to buy a car, what interest is, what APR is, like all these things that they're going to deal with as adults. What do you need insurance on? And all these things. So those are basic life skills that, yes, I agree that we should be teaching. The problem is every one of those things I just named, you can look up online. So if you really wanted to learn this stuff, we could. If we taught it with emotional intelligence and we taught it with behavioral science as well, hey, this is what you should do. This is sometimes why you may not do it because your emotions are reacting. Right. Then I actually think we could have a deep impact on financial literacy. But the information is all out there. And that's what kills me when someone says, we should teach it in school. And I'm thinking, Google it, go to ChatGPT. It's all out there. So why do we still not fully wrap our heads around it? And it's because of our emotional reaction to it.
I think that's where you're hitting the nail on the head with teaching it in schools, that they would have to really tie the emotions into it so people really understand it, so that they don't get the wrong idea.
Yes, I agree. And it can be done, Jim. It can be done. It should be done. But as families, we're kind of ground zero where our kids are, because they're learning to interact with us financially. How my husband and I interact with money has impacted our children. We both have our own financial scar tissue, and I know that they've learned what ours is, and I know what theirs is. So you start to speak in that type of language.
Absolutely. If people want to find out a little bit more from you, where can they go?
So my website is shannon-ryan.com, and my book splash page is up there. It won't be out till September 2nd, but if you're listening to it sooner, you can always pre-order it, and all my other links are in there. So thank you.
Okay, Shannon Ryan, the name of the book upcoming is called Your Money Has Feelings. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jim, for having me. Take care.
Listen and subscribe on podcast apps everywhere. And we're on YouTube at Sherpolution. Sorry, no video. You're welcome.
A very special thanks to Shannon Ryan. Make sure you check out her website and pick up her book, Your Money Has Feelings. You know, it's interesting. While we were doing the interview and I was editing it during playback, I was really realizing how many people are going to see themselves in a lot of the scenarios that we talked about during this interview. So if you see yourself, maybe the book will definitely do you some good. I'm sure that you will learn a lot from it and be entertained in the meantime. Hey, you know, since we're done talking about money, I'm going to tell you about something that's absolutely free, and that's Sherpa Samples. That's on Saturday on wherever you're listening to your podcasts or on the Sherpalution YouTube page. And you can check out the first episodes from the first 7 seasons. I believe we're going into season 6 or season 7. We're getting mighty close there. And all of our episodes are available on our website, which you can find through the show notes. There's so much in our show notes. Why aren't you reading them? Read them, I say. If you click the link there, you will see everything that I've done so far that I hope you will enjoy. And I thank you for listening, and we'll be back next time. And until then, I say to you, Viva la Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to the Sherpa Screening Room. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. I'm Mr. Bruce, and this has been a Sherpa Studios production. Viva la Sherpalution.